Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for stopping by again. Today I just have a few questions that I've been asked that I really don't think that the answers require their own video. So I'm just going to put them together here once in a while and share them even though they may not be closely related to each other, so that the rest of us have a chance to hear them as well. I was written recently. I'm looking at the list here that I've got. And the lady involved asked if she were to sell a property here in Panama, would she be able to get her money out of the country? Yeah, sure, of course. No problem, no different than anywhere else. Now, that may sound like a silly question to some people, but as a friend of mine who had a property in Buenos Aires in Argentina a few years ago discovered, he sold the property for dollars. But the Argentinian government did not want a single dollar leaving that country. They wanted the dollars, and so they insisted he take it in local currency. He had no use for the local currency. It really got to be a nightmare for him. And then the bank that he was dealing with transferred the money in dollars. And so he said, great. And he left the country because he was finished there. And then he got a message later saying, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have done it in dollars. You have to send the dollars back. We'll send you pesos. And he just said, no. That's the end of that. Forget it. He was lucky. And right now, if you're in Venezuela and you have a whole pile of dollars from the sale of something, I mean, good luck getting it out of the country without having to use local currency. This happens predominantly in nations that have currencies of their own, and they want to hold on to every single one of those dollars, and they don't want to give them up to anybody else. So they'll just give you a local currency that nobody else wants anywhere else outside their country. Not in Panama, so that is not a problem. People have write from time to time and say, what about the banks? They've often heard that we have 97 or 120 banks or something like that. And it's true, we have a lot of banks here, but they're here for commercial reasons. Every ship that goes through the Panama Canal, and there are thousands, 12, 13, 14,000 every year, each one has paid for the trip in advance, and the money is in the Panama Canal Authority's bank account. It has to be cleared and settled before they can pass through. And each trip costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so we're talking big bucks here. Now, so many of these banks that you hear about in Panama are actually banks from other nations, and they do not offer checking accounts or savings accounts or any consumer accounts. They are commercial banks, and they're here to represent businesses from their own country as a rule. I see it's easier if you're from Taiwan, or you have a bank of your own here that you can, maybe the same bank you have your account with in Taiwan, and you can send the money and transfer and do everything with a lot less fees, and it just makes life a lot simpler for you. I have no idea whether that's what the Taiwanese do, but I know a lot of countries do that, and it makes perfectly good sense. And the banks themselves in other nations who realize their customers are doing tens of millions of dollars worth of business in Panama, sometimes more, 100 million or more, think to themselves, now just a minute, we want to be part of this too, and we want part of that action, so they set up a bank here, and they're specially licensed for this sort of activity. But they don't offer savings accounts or so on, consumer accounts. However, we do have a number that do provide consumer accounts. It's a very active area. Some of them come from other countries. I mean, one of the big ones is owned by a Colombian bank, for example. But my bank happens to be officially the Bank of Nova Scotia. Many of my Canadian friends will know it better as Scotiabank, which is well known in Canada for having accounts throughout the region for Canadians, but of course anybody else wants to have an account too, including many Panamanians. Scotiabank is one of the fastest growing banks in the country, and it's very successful and very well run, as it is everywhere. But it's not the only one. There are a whole pile of others. Banco General is, which looks like Banco General to you if you're an English speaker. It's the largest bank in the country. It's Panamanian. They have a very fine reputation. A lot of people do their business there. Their online banking has always been considered one of the best in the country, and so forth. We have Credicorp, we have Global Bank, we have a lot of different banks that provide consumer services. So when people ask, what should I use as a bank? And I just say to them, look, look for a bank near where you live or where you plan to live. You might as well make it convenient to yourself. Choose a bank. I suggest you choose one with multiple branches in many different locations. That is one of the larger banks. They have the infrastructure and the solidity to get through just about any situation. They're pretty good, safe bet. And especially if you don't know where you're going to be living in the final analysis, maybe you're just renting here or visiting initially, then in that case you definitely want a bank with branches in many locations so that wherever you end up, you don't necessarily have to go through the hassle of changing banks. You already have an account with a bank here. So I'd look around my area, I see which ones were convenient. If you've got 2 or 3 banks that are more or less have branches that are more or less convenient to where you are or where you expect to be, then visit each one and ask each one what it takes to set up an account, what services they provide, and so forth. In the process, you're interviewing them. And if it's really important to you that you have someone that speaks really good English, well, one of them may have that, another may not. That you may feel much more comfortable. It seems to be a friendlier atmosphere in one of them, or something of this sort. But you're looking at them as well as they're looking at you as a client. It works both ways. And if you can choose one that you think works better for you, and of course you can always ask Panamanians and expats in the area what they think about the various banks and get their opinions too. It's not something to lose sleep over. There is a good bank with a branch near where you're going to be, and that's the important thing to recognize. But as I said, I recommend the bigger ones that have the widest network, and then it's a question of going out and choosing one that I feel comfortable with. Do you need a lawyer, to get a visa? Yes. That's the law. Simple as that. And probably just as well you have that interface, somebody who actually knows what he or she is doing and getting this done as quickly and as painlessly as possible. Do you need a lawyer to sign a legally binding contract, say for a house? No. Anybody, a tourist, can sign a legally binding contract to purchase a house for $300,000 if they want to. I would strongly recommend they not do that without first going to a lawyer. You don't need a lawyer. But the idea of buying something so large, especially if you're not familiar with the legal system, you're not familiar with the Spanish language, and to me, it's just crazy. I would not go into any other country where I didn't speak the language and I didn't know the legal system and sign a legally binding contract for 6 figures. I mean, hey, for 5 figures, forget it. Not going to happen without a lawyer taking a look at it first. And some of the worst stories I've heard from expatriates with real estate problems here have been this handful who get really excited and they go and sign the contract, and somehow in their mind they think that it's not the same as signing a contract at home. Well, it is the same. And if you sign the contract, you're bound to that contract. You hand over a down payment on a house, well, you did that, and it's a perfectly legal thing that you did. But you can't just go back and say, well, I've changed my mind now, just give me the money back. No, it doesn't work that way. So please, use common sense. If you're making a major investment of any kind, to use a major investment, I don't care how much it is, even a rental contract, why not? Since you have a lawyer to guide you through the visa process, I'd go and say, can you take a look at this and give me your advice, tell me whether or not this is standard or if there's anything I should be concerned with. I had that done with my rental contract here in Panama too. It just means it saves you a lot of grief in the future, and the expense is nothing compared to the expense you'll have if you sign the wrong contract. Simple as that. Okay. Then the last one I have for this particular visa, this particular video, it has to do with the comments made at the site. Now, I have a basic rule. I mean, to begin with, all the comments here are moderated, which simply means I see them before they ever get published. So if yours takes a while to show up, it's because I haven't been in to take a look yet. Give me time, I'll get to it. I rarely ever delete any, but I will not accept those that are angry. I don't like those that are shouters. They have everything in capital letters, lots of exclamation points, and just really unhappy people who are angry. And there's no place at this site. and particularly if they're irrelevant to what we'll be talking about here. I don't mind sites that ask questions or are critical or whatever. I just don't like the screamers and the shouters, and that's it. So that's the way we have it here. Also, there's the other kind, and I've had some recently, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I do get people who messages saying, I think this particular website or this particular business is good, and I'd like to recommend it to others, and they give a link. No. That's basically a form of advertising. It may be absolutely legitimate and perfectly genuine. I don't know. But as a rule, no. If I ever, is going to be very rare, but if I mention a business or something here, to begin with, I'm probably not going to link to it. I'll just mention it. Then that business is one I know. Or if they're in a comment and they may mention their name or whatever, if I know the business, I've worked with them, and I know they're perfectly legitimate, then I consider it, and if it looks like a reasonable thing they've said, then fine. I can let that pass. However, two areas I don't care for links, anything to do with real estate and legal services, those two areas. Because I assure you from experience with running a website on Panama that if I were to allow that, this YouTube channel would be covered with basically advertisements for a variety of real estate firms and legal firms that I know little or nothing about, or it's just not appropriate. It's not what this YouTube channel is about. It doesn't mean I'm upset with you. I mean, I understand people are in business. They really think this business is a really good one or whatever, and I appreciate that. But this is not appropriate for this channel. I've just made that decision, so that's the way it's done here. I love you. No problem. Just understand that, and everything's fine. So, thank you once again for stopping by. I look forward to seeing you again, and I hope some of this has been of some interest to you.